I first heard about Wednesdays last year in Steam Spring Next Fest, and I was really curious about it. The trailer really drew me in. I love a visual novel, so I wanted to give it a shot. I checked it out last year, which I'll link the video right over here. After I finished the demo and I added the game to my Steam wishlist, like all games in my Steam wishlist, the more that's added, the more that I kind of forget about them. And it's not necessarily like a bad thing. I just have too many games that I want to play. On a random day in November, I was going through my games list and I wanted to play something different. I wanted to play something short. So I bought Wednesdays. Here are my thoughts on it. Just a few warnings. This game does deal with a lot of heavy material. I will post the trigger warnings. I highly recommend this game. It's so beautiful and well done, but please make sure to take care of yourself. I feel like the developers do an incredible job of letting the player decide how much they want to play. They do a good job of showcasing the trigger warnings. If you want to, you can also read through the dialogue, which I found very helpful because some trigger warnings in games can be on the mild end or it can be on the severe end. So I found it really helpful to read through the dialogue to see that if you choose to skip a memory, the game doesn't punish you for it. It doesn't negate the story at all. I think the developers did a good job of including that accessibility. With that being said, for warned is forearmed. Let's dive in. Wednesdays shifts back and forth from a stylized graphic novel to a 2D pixel animation that is reminiscent of 90s management style games. Wednesdays has a lot of high contrasting colors in their panels. I really feel like the color choices were intentional. I felt like it was more than just visual contrast, but also tonal contrast as well, which I really enjoyed. Our name is Timothy and we start out at a computer playing a game called Orko Park. We then meet an Orko called, you guessed it, Orko, and he explains the concept of the game and how to take care of the guests, which reminds me of another game. Interesting. Zoo Tycoon, Orko Park. Each attraction contains a memory from Timothy's childhood. And when we build that attraction, we get to dive into the memory. It feels like we're coloring in a sketchbook. As we're coloring in these pages, we're filling in Timothy's memories as well, which is cool because it ties in the concept of memory and trauma. And I like that added aspect. I felt like every single memory that we got to come across was hand-drawn with care. In this image, for example, the colors are blue and pink. It's super whimsical. It reminds me of those shoujo dating simulators I played growing up as a kid. I feel like Wednesdays also depicts how lonely these big emotions get, how ostracized you can feel while going through these varying range of emotions. When saying I felt like the color choices weren't intentional, I felt it especially in this image. We see Timothy talking with his dad, Joel. The colors are in orange and the landscape is in blue. And orange and blue are opposites on a color wheel. So in this scene, you really feel the divisiveness in the dialogue and in the environment itself. We open up on a soap opera and our characters are Timothy and Paulina, our grandmother. Timothy is a child and he is incredibly bored and restless in grandma's house. He wants to go over to his cousin Giovanni's. After some back and forth, eventually Paulina does relent and lets Tim go over to his house. We skip forward in time to Paulina's funeral. This is the image where Timothy and Dad Joel are talking to each other. It's a bit awkward. It feels in this time span, Joel and Timothy have grown apart. Joel doesn't really know how to bridge that gap between him and his son. It's interesting that we get to play from Joel's perspective. Joel tries to make conversation with Timothy at the funeral. He tries to talk about Paulina, he tries to talk about the church, he tries to talk about Tim's work, but it's all like one-worded answers and Tim doesn't really want to talk. It's apparent that Tim isn't used to Joel asking him questions about himself, and Joel isn't used to this awkwardness around his son. So they're both dancing around very similar issues. Joel speaks to Tim about the church, how city council wants to remove the bells, but Joel doesn't want them to go. Timothy retorts that he feels like the bells are a nuisance, while Joel counters, feeling like that bells by the start and end of something. While this conversation is going on, we see a man with a black box for a head in a crowd of people talking to other family members. It gets to a point in the conversation with Joel, and Timothy starts crying. This is something that really struck me in the demo. It hit so hard early on. We kept trying to pick the option to hug Timothy, but every time we did, it just kept prolonging it. We couldn't breach that gap and give our son what he needed. He kept trying to put it off and wait for the right time. As we're playing through these options, the man with the black box for a head goes up and hugs Timothy, and the bells ring, and the scene ends there. Tim and Letitia are our characters. We open up outside of an apartment building. There are 2 windows on either side, one with Letitia and one with him in it. The scene is set right after Tim and Letitia just had sex, and Tim asks Letitia if she liked it, and she gives her honest opinion. When I was first playing the demo and we got to this part, I remember thinking how naive and juvenile Tim's wording was in regards to what just happened. I was leaning towards Letitia's side a little bit. I mean, she was being a little mean, like, not gonna lie, but at the same time, it felt really weird. I just think it could have been communicated better. However, further into the game, we find out that in this memory, Timothy is 15 and Letitia is 20. So it makes sense that Tim's wording is juvenile because he is a kid, he is a child. That just really was a jackknife of emotions, because when you're playing the game, you get to lean in to Letitia's perspective with that window on the right side, and then having that new information and going back on that left window, you can really sympathize for Timothy and vilify Letitia. I enjoy the staging of this memory, the 2 windows, the 2 different perspectives. I thought it was beautifully done. This scene is one of my favorites that has been staged. By now, you've realized going through the first 3 memories, they are all out of sorts. We're jumping around in different points of the timeline. When trying to work through trauma, it is difficult to remember all the big pieces. There are 2 categories of memory. From that are 2 subsidiaries. The 2 main categories are explicit and implicit memory. Explicit memory is long-term memory that is about general experiences that people can immediately recall. Implicit memory works in the context if you see the word store a bunch and then you see that same variation of letters like this, you would automatically think the word is store instead of, say, the word is stare. Implicit memory can exist when explicit memory fails. What type of memory we're experiencing in Wednesdays is episodic memory. Episodic memory, a subsidiary of explicit memory, where the brain has a hard time remembering all the facts of trauma, but you still remember bits and pieces. Trauma can shut down episodic memory and fragment the sequence of events, and this directly affects the hippocampus in your brain. From here on out, I'm not going to go in the order of the game. I'm going to skip around to different memories. Tim is on the school bus with his friend Cyrielle. Cyrielle wants Tim to give her head pats, so she lays her head down in his lap. It's really fun because we get this love meter off to the left-hand side. Like I referenced earlier, this reminded me a lot of the dating simulator games I played growing up as a kid, so I enjoyed that callback and that nod to that style of gaming. Cyrielle broaches a conversation on how she thinks it's weird that Letitia and and Tim are 5 years apart, which, hello, yes, it's very weird. And I'm glad someone is saying it. They begin to converse about sexuality, and Sariel reveals that initially when she first met Tim, she thought he was gay. He vaguely mentions that he thought he was, and he's had experiences before in the past. There's some silence, and after some time passes, Tim asks Sariel if that's okay, if she thinks it's weird. She responds, no, not at all, as long as everyone was into it. We can't really see his face because his face is a box, but you can infer from context clues that he looks pretty concerned, which makes us think that it maybe wasn't consensual at all. The next set of memories I'm going to share from Tim is him as an adult. Tim and his friend Yerim are driving on their way to a getaway weekend with some friends, and Yerim shares some information about his uncle, that his uncle passed in jail. He explains to Timothy the reasoning for him being in jail. This memory serves as the first time that Tim can recognize similar events that happened to him as a child. He tries to rationalize Yerim's uncle's actions. He's not excusing it, but really it's a way for Tim to begin to cope with what happened. It's a disease and a sickness as Tim tries to wrestle and grapple with his own understanding of not only what happened to him, but hearing this so blatantly in a conversation. The conversation moves back and forth, and at the end, Tim admits to Yerim that something may have happened to him. Yerim looks over and the scene ends there. Back at Orko Park, Orko has a memory. He remembers another kid playing with us, but he can't quite put a name to him. As Timothy's memories come back, so does Orka's as well. Tim is there with his friends, Sarah and Stu. They have a newborn named Neil. And in the midst of talking and hanging out, Sarah asks Tim to change Neil's diaper. And Tim freaks out and says no. I personally think that Tim is afraid to even be around children because he thinks he's like the person who hurt him. In a 2008 study, there were 30 people with OCD that were examined. And it was discovered that patients who have experienced CSA had a 53% chance of developing something called EOCD. Even though Tim knows he would never do anything like that, it is a common fear of CSA victims that they feel like they're going to perpetuate the cycle, even though there is a high probability that that is not the case. So in this moment, I could potentially see him as having some of that anxiety. Sarah and Stu talk about options at great length about finding a babysitter for Neil, but Sarah is a new mom and doesn't really trust anybody else. Also, they don't want to fork over a lot of money for a babysitter. She trusts only Tim and asks him if he would babysit. He's unsure and pushes it off because he's scared of himself and his trauma. Giovanni, that's our cousin and the other kid who played Orko Park with us. Orko remembers and he asked him how he's doing and if he still talked to him. So I lied. Okay, wait. Half lied. This memory features both past and present. So it's an amalgamation of Timothy and his grandfather Claude's mindset in past and present. Present day, Tim is there a few feet away from his grandfather. Claude is building a wall to separate him and his brother's property, so Timothy's uncle. He's doing it to prevent Tim from going over there. Timothy asks Claude why he picked the wall, and all the options that we see are pretty frivolous. Even though Claude builds the wall, Tim still climbs in order to go see Giovanni. Tim speaks with his past grandpa and states that he must have known something. He must have known what happened and what went on over there. This is a variation of the adult interference that we have seen similarly with Paulina, with Joel, and now with Claude as well. These half measures that don't actually protect kids, but instead further relent this hurt that keeps happening. I find it really interesting that in the first two memories, we are speaking from an adult's perspective. I feel like Paulina preventing Timothy from trying to go over to Giovanni's house was her way of trying to protect protect him. But ultimately, I don't feel like she really knew what was going on, but I feel like that was her way of trying to get involved. With Joel, him trying to ask what's going on in Tim's life, and we keep getting the option to hug him. I think that is also his way of reaching out. But what Timothy needed was someone to go the full distance, really reach out a hand and help, and not just a halfway motion. I thought it was really interesting that in the first two memories that we got to play in these adult perspectives that could have gone that distance and really helped Timothy. Walls don't protect you, they isolate you. Claude asked him why he is so obsessed with the wall. He admits he wants to believe he wasn't completely alone, that someone knew. This stirs the question in Tim's mind, how do you know you were alone? This is one of my favorite scenes in the game. I think the juxtaposition of the yellow and the purple really highlight past and present. I think the staging of both of these times in Tim's life is really beautiful. You see that vines have grown over this brick wall. You see that there are some cracks in the foundation, which is pretty metaphorical. All these adults that tried these, I keep saying this, but it's true, that tried these half measures to stop what they had an inkling of what was going on instead of actually listening and doing something to alleviate the problem. I just think this artwork is so beautiful, and I will be thinking about this particular memory for a long time. Tim and Angelo are our characters. Angelo is our cousin, so Giovanni's brother. Tim emails Angelo asking if by any chance he might have been a victim of the stuff that Tim was as a kid. Angelo calls back as they talk about their experiences. We get feedback from other survivors who have gone through similar things. Tim admits Angelo's brother Giovanni was the one who hurt him. With Angelo's questions, not only do we get to hear Tim's answers, but we also get to hear a cacophony of answers from other people who have been asked these similar questions. I think it's incredibly powerful to have this other narrative while maintaining the back and forth with Tim and Angelo. One of the questions, who have you told? A lot of survivors saying no one, is impactful to the scene overall. It really satiates the fact that Tim isn't alone and that a lot of people have gone through so many similar things, been asked a lot of similar questions. Tim tells Angelo that sometimes sexual assault represses memory. Some people remember it all. For others, it comes in flashes and in waves. And for some, it comes back all at once, many years later. Throughout the course of the conversation, Angelo does begin to remember that Giovanni did do something weird to him as well. They lean on each other over their shared trauma, and the scene ends there. Over the course of experiencing these new memories, Orko starts to remember. He lashes out and becomes angry for Tim. He quickly apologizes and says that he wasn't thinking of Tim and he only felt the anger of realizing that Tim had been hurt. He says if Tim needs anything to help him remember, that he'll do his best to help out. Tim is with his mom, Rosemarie. They are sitting on some lawn chairs waiting for day to break. It's incredibly beautiful. I love the colors in this scene. It's very similar to Sariel and Tim's memory. They're talking about the guests at the party that they just had. Rosemarie says she invited Giovanni, but he didn't come, which leads to an awkward pause, and then Tim gathers the courage to open up to his mom. He has a lot of questions. We, the player, get to answer as many as we feel comfortable. So I really feel like we're in sync with Tim here, answering and going into detail however much you want to. I think there's something powerful in being able to act out an understanding and safe experience without feeling like your voice is being taken from you. We hear everything that happened between Tim and Giovanni, and at the end, his mom asks us, "What do you want to do?" Tim wants to confront Giovanni, and his mother, although nervous, gives him her full support. She asks if they can pick up the conversation tomorrow because she wants to give him the space to be vulnerable, but like all hard conversations, they take time and multiple of them. Tim agrees and says, "Oh, and Mom, happy birthday." It's time for our last ride, our last amusement park experience. Well, before you leave, there is one last thing you need to know, and please make sure you remember. In the name of everyone who has ever set foot in this park, we believe you and we believe in you. Tim breathes in and out. We're back outside the computer. He crafts a text to Giovanni to meet up at a cafe. We get to the cafe and the whole scene is in black and white. They sit across the table from each other and Tim confronts Giovanni about what happened. Giovanni apologizes, and he knows it's past the point of apologies. Giovanni describes the guilt about hurting Tim and how it was like a bubble in a section of his brain. Outside of those moments, it didn't exist to him, which is an interesting psychology in terms of abuse. A lot of abusers have that shame. I imagine it would be hard for those emotions and actions to coexist in a way that doesn't damage you further. Giovanni got to forget about it, and Tim unfortunately never got that same comfort. Tim finds out that Giovanni also did this to his cousins on his mom's side. She got the courage to speak up. That side of the family no longer talks to Giovanni's family. The cafe begins to fade away. As the conversation goes on, Tim asks Giovanni if he's also been hurt too. He does confirm it, but he doesn't want to talk about it. Him confirming what happened to him perpetuates the cycle of hurt that has been happening. Giovanni says that if Tim wants to start any kind of legal procedure, he will do it, but Tim isn't interested in that. There are 3 different options we could pick as to what we want to do. All of them were valid and all representing how different people cope with the trauma of what happened to them. I think Wednesdays gives a lot of players the courage to confront their metaphorical abuser head on. And no matter what option they choose, it's theirs and it can't be taken away. So not only does it give Tim a lot of power, but it gives the player power, which is a really strong aspect of Wednesdays. We chose the option that Giovanni has to talk about it. He has to be the one to tell the family, because someone will tell whether you like it or not. Tim continues. "I no longer resent you, but that doesn't mean I forgive you. I don't think I'll ever be able to." The scene fades and it's just Tim's head, the cube, and Giovanni's head, black box. Tim wants to get over the fear of himself and what he could become. So that fear, that shame, they're all yours. Everything else, I'll be able to use it. I'll turn it into something that makes me a better person. And I hope you will be able to do the same. The scene fades to black and we're back in the park and Orko asks us how it went. It's time to build a new island, a new park with new memories, Virgin Island. Orko says to us, "Goodbye, Timothy. I hope I never see you again in these parts." And it cuts to now. Neil and Tim are our characters. Neil has grown up quite a bit and is sitting on Tim's shoulders asking us what kind of trees they are, and we're giving silly names. This is such a subtle detail that I noticed coming from before, where Tim was afraid to even touch or interact with Neil because of his fear, to having now Neil comfortably sit on top of Tim's shoulders and Tim feeling relaxed about it and even laughing and joking is such a huge jump. Tim being able to work through and process what happened to him. I found it incredibly encouraging for Tim's story and for his growth. It made me really happy to see that moment. While we're walking through the forest, Neil asks us why we have a square head. There's a moment of surprise and humorous fourth wall breaking as Tim looks at us. It's really interesting because throughout the story, I wasn't sure if anybody else saw that we had box heads or the other characters in the story had box heads. So for this moment of clarity and nuance, I thought it was fun that they added that because they allude to children not having a filter. Children often tell it how it is and are often going to call out things that might seem uncomfortable or awkward to us as adults. We've gotten to pick up the clues that these square-shaped heads are an allegory for the similar trauma that Tim has gone through. Neil asks if that's why his mom has a square head, and we go, "Oh, you noticed?" He explains that whenever she kisses him, he always feels like there is an edge to it, like she's afraid it will hurt. Neil asked him if he'll ever have a square-shaped head. Tim kneels down, takes Neil off his shoulders, and says, "Your mom, your dad, Uncle Yeram, me, we're going to do everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen to you." How are you going to do that? We'll talk, we'll keep on talking with kid words, with adult words, with all the words we can find, and if we have to, we'll invent some. Sounds good. I've never been good at verbalizing what I want to say. I stutter, I've had speech issues, and I just generally find that writing has helped me so much. Now, guaranteed, a lot of my public speaking has been made better through streaming, through jobs where I've had to constantly improv, but when I'm not prepared, a lot of times words fail me, especially when I experience media that leaves me so awestruck. I have to find something and I have to write it down. And I wanted to make a video showcasing this game because I have heard nothing but incredible reviews about it. I played a demo last March, so it's been a year about since it came out, which is so insane. It's taken me a while to figure out what I want to say and how I want to say it, and the delicate nature that this requires. This game forces you to reflect, to look back on your own or other people's experience. This game handles the heavy topics of abuse with the utmost care and sensitivity. It never downplays the gravity of the situation. It doesn't hide behind the watered down words that we see in media today. It says the ugly words multiple times without hiding behind false pretenses, which I feel like is so needed. We see a lot of censorship when victims are talking about their experiences because they don't want to get their stories hidden. Wednesdays does an incredible job of taking away those watered down words, telling it how it is, what happened, and the very real and ugly feelings of how to work through this, and sometimes the polarizing thoughts that can come with it. There are many times in the game, because I played through every memory for the sake of the game, but also for the sake of this video. There were a lot of times where I felt like it was really hard for me to keep playing through a memory, but just as these characters couldn't quit, I couldn't either. Wednesdays demonstrates how games can be a powerful media for sharing perspectives and raising awareness. This game functions more like a visual novel than a standard traditional game. It lets the player navigate complicated emotions within a sensitive topic. This game lets you go at your own pace, and I cannot express how much I love the accessibility when it comes to deciding what you want to play, which memories you want to skip, and how you want to experience Tim's story. I think more games should implement this level of accessibility without taking away from the storyline. To anyone out there who has gone through something similar, please know that you're not alone. I know it can feel really heavy right now in this day and age where there are people in power who don't care and blatantly continue to let this kind of activity slide. Please know that there are people around you who do care. This is a long time coming, but Wednesdays was my 2025 game of the year, and I sincerely hope that you guys get to check it out. If you enjoyed the video, it would really mean so much to me if you guys subscribe. This video took such a long time, but it was one that I knew that I wanted to make, and I had to showcase this game. Be kind, do good, and I will see you all next time.